Welcome to Idaho Fishing Game's Hook and Bulletin podcast, your weekly news roundup of hunting, fishing, trapping, and conservation stories from around the Gem State. Hosted by Fishing Game's Public Information Specialist, Connor J. Lease.
Sam, how do you say your last name real quick?
It's Oberto, like the beef jerky.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Sam Oberto.
It's Italian.
Oh, really?
I've been told northern Italian.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like Italy.
Yeah.
I've never
I like
been.
beef jerky.
Oh,
It's gotten too expensive though, so
that's true. You
gotta make your own jerky. Yeah. A lot of duck jerky.
Oh, I thought you were going with Italy. It was gotten too expensive.
Oh.
But jerky, yeah.
I think Italy's probably cheaper than America right now. I say that without any idea if it's true or not, but I feel like it should be.
Yeah.
It could be. I don't know. I went to Italy 4 or 5 years ago, and it was just amazing.
It's pizza and Fiats.
Not so much pizza. Not as much as you would think.
Yeah.
Like, we eventually had to have pizza because of that expectation, but it's not everywhere. Pasta, for sure, everywhere. Cheese, everywhere. Wine, everywhere. Fiats, Vespas, everywhere. You don't see a lot of big vehicles
Yeah.
at all.
Probably don't fit too well on the streets.
No, but like their interstate system is very similar to ours. So there's some stuff that's like, oh, this is very comfortable and familiar. Obviously other things that are not. So
Yeah.
it's worth it. Save your money. Go to Italy sometime. The Oberto factory.
Awesome. All right. We are down here in Twin Falls, Idaho for a very special episode. We're trying to do more of these long-form interview discussions with some of our staff, and we got a really cool one today. Sam Oberto, one of our conservation officers down in the Magic Valley region, Region 4. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great. Sunny day. Got short sleeves on, so it's warming up here for spring.
How are you doing over there, Sonny, with your short sleeves? We're also joined by Ben Bieri. Ben, what do you do again?
Yeah, I'm your assistant on a lot of this.
Oh, you're a digital content specialist.
Yeah, I'm a digital content specialist, which means we get to put out podcasts and social media and work on the website.
And brainstorm on really stupid digital concepts.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Sam, we're looking forward to talking to you, man. We have a ton of questions because, as we understand it, you patrol one of the largest zones in the state of Idaho. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. I believe it's the second largest, and that's me looking at a map and saying, "Oh wow, it's a big area I have." It's a little over 2,900 square miles, which is quite large. In perspective, I think there's a handful of patrol areas that definitely cap over 2,000 square miles, get in the 2,500s, but anything close to 3,000 is a little unusual. The first largest area belongs to Region 3, my border to the west, Lauren Howard. She has 3,500 square miles, I believe.
Okay.
And she's the biggest area, but I'm right next door, second largest.
Really quick though, is it broken down by, are there like enforcement areas or is it by hunting unit?
They kind of go hand in hand. Our enforcement units typically follow the hunting units that we have on the map. They don't follow it perfectly. Sometimes they get cut in, but for the most part, each officer is in control of a certain unit.
Okay.
Or units.
And what hunting units do you oversee?
Unit 46 and 47 there. So 47's the Browns Bench. It's kind of the garbage side of Idaho. Most of it would be in Nevada. And then Unit 46, which is north to the Snake River there.
Okay. Yeah, looking at it on a map, it's massive.
Yeah. It looks like south of the freeway, basically, to paint a picture, south of the freeway to the Idaho border, from...
It's going to be Highway 93 would be my eastern boundary down towards Jackpot there.
Okay.
And then my western boundary is actually the Bruno River that runs out of the garbage out of Nevada as well. And the Bruno actually dumps in out towards Mountain Home, kind of that area.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a huge area, yeah.
Yeah.
How so have you bounced around from different patrol areas in your career, or is this kind of the first and foremost?
This is the first patrol area that I've had, the only patrol area that I had. When I got hired on, I was assigned to the 428 patrol. That's my badge number, so we refer to it as the 428. And been here for 2.5 years, so certainly eligible to transfer if I wanted to, but this is my area, and this is where I'm at here for now.
Do you like having such a big zone on your shoulders, or is it kind of intimidating?
I actually really enjoy the big area. For me, it is big, but it's not that huge. I came from Nevada, or I come from Nevada. I worked for the Department of Wildlife down there for the summers full time. Went to school at UNR Nevada, Reno. I'm used to huge areas. I'm used to watching the fuel tank. I'm used to hundreds of miles. I'm used to big open spaces with very few people, very few resources. So my patrol, I feel right at home on my patrol area. And, it's so big definitely at times when I'm out there by myself and I'm sitting in my truck or I'm sitting glass and watching something. I get that feeling in my soul of like, holy crap, I'm the only one out here, and it's definitely one of those patrol areas that puts you in your place. You're like, I'm just one dude out here, and you realize that Mother Nature's in charge, and it reminds you that we're just passing through the area.
That's right. Did you grow up in Nevada?
I did, yep.
What part?
I was born and raised in Las Vegas, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
that's why you don't mind not being around people.
It's a little bit of both. It's a combination of not being around people all the time, but you also seek it as a person. You want that connection. You want to make that connection with people and talk to people and interact and stuff like that. Growing up in Vegas definitely gave me a pretty cultural upbringing.
Oh, I'm sure. So you said you went to University of Nevada, Reno?
Yep, Nevada, Reno. Got my undergrad there in rangeland ecology and management. I actually started in the wildlife program, but I felt like I wasn't able to connect to the landscape as well. I wanted to, look out my truck window or look out while I was, walking through a certain area and say, hey, what's going on with this landscape? Why does it look like this? So I actually changed to rangeland management 2 years in. And it was right up the same alley, so I still graduated within the 4-year time frame. But I really enjoyed that rangeland and the interactions with cattle, wildlife, soil science, water science, stuff like that. It felt like it gave me a really good foundation to understand what was going on outside.
So what led you to come to the officer side?
I think for a lot of folks, I'll step back a little bit. My father was a firefighter paramedic down in Henderson. Okay. He had a career there for 30 years. So the whole emergency side of things always appealed to me. And while I was young, I actually wanted to be a fireman, and I kind of followed through with that. I was an explorer for Henderson Fire Department for I think a little less than a year and did that. And that was a good program. So I was kind of shaping up to go that route. While I was going to school at Reno, I got my EMT basic and got my national certification for that. So I was kind of gearing up to go into the fire service and kind of go that route. But there's always a piece of me that wanted to be a game warden for the longest time. And it kind of came to the surface as I came to graduation. He said, you know what, this is something I actually want to do more than that. This is what I want to pursue. This is what I want to give a shot to. And that basically came from, I grew up just like most of us doing a ton of hunting, a ton of fishing. My dad introduced me to this when I was really, really young. I mean, I remember him taking me when I was 3-4 years old. I hardly remember, just when you're young enough to make those first memories that are just really vague in your head. And I remember him taking me out into the field, and we'd go rabbit hunting, quail hunting, chukar hunting down there in southern Nevada where I grew up. And I'd be so tired when I came back. I remember he'd have his side-by-side or his over and under on one shoulder, and he'd be carrying me on the other shoulder back to the truck because I couldn't make it back to the truck. So my passion for hunting started super, super young, and it just grew from there. And he introduced me to, waterfowl hunting, and we did archery hunting. We did muzzleload hunting, and that was for antelope, deer, elk. If it had 4 legs, we pursued it. If it flied, we pursued it. It's just a long history there of hunting.
That's cool, man. Did you ever go out of state with your dad to go hunting, or was it all pretty much centered around Nevada?
Nevada offered a lot of opportunity. Most of it was in Nevada, but we did actually live really close to Arizona, so we did occasionally get a small game license or a turkey tag down there in Arizona, and we'd go over there and hunt birds too. So
cool.
Yeah, have you ever shot a javelina?
I have not. No, I really want to though. They look kind of like a poor man's Cape buffalo. That's what they call it.
So what first put Idaho on your map?
Well, I think as I was like, okay, I want to be a game warden, I thought, well, what states am I interested in? For various reasons, and also I was like, okay, if I'm going to go into law enforcement, I think I know I want to go work for a state that, is more friendly towards that type of career. And Nevada was up on my list. Arizona was up on my list. Idaho on my list. Wyoming, Montana, just kind of all the big Western states were still up there. I didn't have any interest to go back east. Most folks who come east, or who from the east came west and they never really go back. Not too many folks who know what they have in the west go east, and if they do, they know what they've lost, for a lack of a better term. But Idaho was like, it looked a little greener to the north. We had more resources here in Idaho. We had more opportunity in terms of tag and hunting and stuff like that. So I'm like, well, and it was also a little bit bigger agency than Nevada too. So I was kind of interested in that, knowing it might offer a little bit more mobility and more opportunity in that regard. So Idaho was, I came here for the same reason a lot of other folks come here to Idaho.
So as you got up here, did you apply to those other states, or did you just settle on Idaho's it? That's where I want to go.
Yeah, Idaho was my first choice.
Okay.
And because it was my first choice, I put in my application to Idaho, and like most folks, I didn't exactly expect to get it. I knew I had some qualifications, but I knew Idaho was super competitive for this type of position, even though there was a lot of positions opening up in the public sector for fire or law enforcement, and game warden service or conservation service was no different. But yeah, it was definitely my first choice. It was my only application I put in. And when I got the interview and got picked up, I was just ecstatic and said, absolutely, yes, I'll take that job offer.
So what does it look like after that? After our HR people and whoever does that, say, yeah, we want you to be on board. What does that look like? What are the next steps after that?
Well, it's just the traditional onboarding with the agency. They tour you around headquarters to get you your uniforms, your punch passes, all the basic necessities of being an employee. But for the most part, as a conservation, your first year, so your first 12 months is dedicated to pretty much all of your training. So you get hired on, then you're basically sent off to the region that you're going to go work for. Like I work here in Region 4. They sent me to Region 4. And I started riding along with officers and that stuff. And then you go to a peace officer academy in Meridian, and most of our officers go to the Meridian Peace Officer Academy, and that's the same police academy that a lot of the city municipal police officers go to. County deputies go to the same academy. So we receive that same basic police training that a lot of other officers receive, and that you get that completed within your first year. And then you have your field training program. They call it FTEP, and it's just the evaluation program that you go through within that first year, where they send you all over Idaho to train with different conservation officers, and to get that experience. And they grade you and they criticize you in hopes that you'll become a better officer and learn more. It's just a training opportunity. Yeah. And I was super lucky. I went up to Sandpoint. It was one of my areas. Island Park was another area. Grangeville was another area. So the state does a super awesome job of hey, you're new to the state. You're going to go see what Idaho has to offer, see how different officers operate, see how different regions operate. And you really get a great beginning foundation for your career using that program.
So you had to go to all the pretty places, and then they still sent you to the desert.
Oh, absolutely. Maybe they felt bad for me, so they thought that my field training program, they could enlighten me a little bit by sending me to all the good stuff.
Yeah,
and
just so you know what else is out there.
Just so they knew what else is out there, but I'm still here.
Yeah.
My eyes are open, but I'm still here.
And you oversee, I guess that's kind of the term, is oversee, over 1 million acres.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And, most of my contacts come from the northern side of my patrol area, because most of the population is close to Twin Falls, and I pretty much border with the town of Twin Falls. So a lot of my contacts are spent in the northern part of my unit on the river corridor, because that's where most people are fishing, and that's where most people are hunting the deer for the general unit in 46. And of course, a lot of that other acreage that we talk about isn't utilized quite as heavily, but we still get out there. I still get out there quite a bit to make sure that I am, contacting a few folks out there still, and making sure my presence is known, distributed throughout the entire patrol area.
Yeah. How long does it take you if you were to, say, do a loop, how long would that take you?
It would take you about 4 hours to probably do a full loop, 5 hours maybe. There's parts of my patrol area or areas that I cover that aren't necessarily mine that take easy 3 hours to get into. And that's if the roads are good. That's if the weather's good. So if I get a call about something and it's way off in my corner, it's 3 hours away.
Do you work with the Nevada, those that border? Have you made contact with those people with that agency as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We do work pretty closely with Endow. They're a great agency. They have some great officers down there.
Do you make faces at them across the border when you guys coming up on each other's turf?
Honestly, we're so far and few between. I haven't even actually gotten to bump into them yet.
So it's just emails.
Yeah, emails. But we definitely assist Nevada, and likewise, they assist us. We definitely we let each other know if we have somebody who's kind of run afoul who we believe might be in each other's jurisdiction, and we work together on that. So.
Yeah. Real quick, I want to jump back to the training aspect of it real quick. You had mentioned when you're doing that 1 year kind of probationary cycle throughout the state, do you already have in mind, or do you know where they're going to be sticking you during that time? Or is it kind of like wherever I fit in or wherever the agency needs me?
Yeah, so when you're actually hired, you're assigned a patrol area right when you get hired. So you're going to go back to that. So even while you're on your 12-month probation period and you're traveling around, you're going to come back to that patrol area that they assigned to you when you got hired. Okay,
so going back to Ben's comment, you're poking around up in the Panhandle and in tree country and stuff, but knowing you're going to be down in Unit 46.
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, no, I get a little claustrophobic up there. It's like all those trees freak me out because coming from Nevada, I'm like, if I can't see 100 miles, that's not good. When I get up in the trees and I can't see 100 miles. But it's pretty cool up there too, but it's a different beast. It feels like a whole different state up there.
Yeah. And I guess my other question too is during the training, do they tailor the training based on where you're going to be placed after you finish your probationary time? Like are Panhandle enforcement officers trained in a different way, or is it all pretty much standard across the board?
It's a very standardized program, so all the officers are trained to the same par, regardless of where they're going to be stationed or the regions where they work. Of course, there is an element of differences regionally speaking. We're all the same training, but as I work in Region 4 and I work with some of the senior officers in Region 4, we're going to start to work a little different than maybe some of the other regions, just with our customs and norms, what we do and we don't do. And we operate differently to effectively cover our terrain and the clientele that we have here, or the people that we're trying to check here. So we're all trained the same, but at the end of the day, officers are going to be, slightly different depending on the terrain that they cover and the region they work.
Gotcha. So talking about your region specifically, what does the makeup of your patrol area look like? Is it a lot of BLM? Is it a lot of Forest Service, private land, state land? What is kind of the makeup of it?
It's almost entirely Bureau land management land, BLM land, as we refer to it as, or if you're on Onyx, it's the yellow stuff.
There you go.
I actually have like very few trees. I mean, I probably have like, I don't even know, 30 or 40 evergreens. Like honestly, like I almost know every evergreen tree I have on 40. And this is like, I'm talking about Unit 47 towards the Nevada state line. I have a couple timber patches that make me feel good.
Yeah.
And that's right on state line. And then 47 is basically composed of just a whole bunch of rolling hills of sagebrush, a little bit of timber, really big aspen stands that are, I love aspen. Those are awesome.
Yeah.
Then you get into 46 and you head north into the Snake River Plain. That's where it gets pretty dang flat. And of course, there's wildlife out there and they're scattered far and few between for the most part. But that just becomes a lot of rolling sagebrush and rabbit brush and crested wheatgrass. My patrol area burned pretty heavily years ago, and it got replanted with a lot of crested. So
was that the Murphy Fire?
I think it was the Murphy Fire.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Thanks, Terry. What kind of wildlife are you seeing out there on a daily basis?
47 is good for deer. It has some elk, and then 46 has a resident population of deer in it that are hunkered around a lot of the agricultural areas that provide the habitat for the deer in 46. That's where most of the deer are in 46, except there are, contrary to popular belief, actually, is there's deer all the way through 46 in every little nook and cranny. There's just not a lot of them. So the mule deer are a really fascinating animal. They can live in tons of different terrain and just flat sagebrush with nothing else. They can live in that, and they do live in that. And then, of course, 46 has wintering elk in it as well, and that population has decreased in the last few years. But there is a couple big herds that winter in 46.
Okay. How often do you encounter rattlesnakes out there?
I actually haven't encountered a rattlesnake. I've actually encountered quite a few rattlesnake skins. So
Really,
when
not
they
one?
shred. I haven't seen one, which is amazing because I spend a lot of time in the Rimrock country. I kind of refer to Unit 46 as the land of cracks because it's super, super flat. And then all of a sudden you have like these massive canyons and you're just walking, all of a sudden it's, a couple 1,000-foot drop. And then it's flat, and then you get to the next drainage, and it's just a massive drop. We have that really cool landscape here in Southwest Idaho. Whether it's the Bruno or Cedar Creek drainage or the Jarbidge drainage, it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. To your point, if you don't know much about this area, you would never believe that they're the canyons that are down here. Like it's amazing, and it draws a lot of people down here to do all sorts of different stuff. But yeah, I could also see where it would be harder to patrol at some level because you're not Evel Knievel. You can't just jump over the like you can see something happening on the other side. How do you go about like with the terrain that you have? How do you go about ensuring like it's all covered?
They use a hot air balloon.
Drones, hot air balloons. I don't know. I probably have other ideas too that I'll refrain from.
No, that's a great question. It's a massive area, and at the end of the day, is it covered as well as from an officer standpoint as well as I'd love it to be covered? No, it's not. I cover it the best I can, so I kind of go back to prioritizing where most of the people live, where most of my contacts are going to be up on that river corridor. And if I start getting complaints of certain activities that might be in a more remote area, I'm going to go out there and spend more time out there. So it's kind of dictated by the resource. Do I have an open season that I'm going to go out and check some of these more remote areas for? And like I said, those complaints are going to push me out into that area to spend consistent time where I normally wouldn't.
So really building relationship, like you said, with your population centers, paying attention to the calendar, what's open, what's not. Those are tools that you have to, refine.
Absolutely, yeah. You got to know where the wildlife are.
Yeah. And
that's why, as you learn your area, you need to get in all those nooks and crannies. You have to cover those miles and figure out which habitat types this animal likes. If I have sage grouse season, I know where most of my sage grouse are in my area because I spent tons of times on a motorcycle, a dirt bike, tons of time driving around and exploring and stuff like that. So I know where most of my sage grouse are. So when, those tags open up, I know right where to look for those hunters. And that's where I can make all my contacts just for that type of hunt right there.
You mentioned motorcycles. What method of transportation are you mostly using when you're out patrolling? Do you kind of mix it up, or is it you hop on the ATV every day and go out and patrol your loop?
Honestly, I use a truck more than anything. Put a lot of miles on a 4x4 Chevy Silverado.
Not an ad.
Not an ad. No, I'm just saying. It's gotten me places.
Yeah.
So it's a solid vehicle that gets me a majority where I need to go.
You ever gotten stuck?
Yes.
Ooh.
Yes. I've never had to been pulled out.
What's the worst time?
When he was in the Dodge, that's when he
No, exactly. I have full faith in the truck for the most part. I have gotten myself into some bad situations. I definitely go places some folks might not go. Coming from Nevada, I'm used to super nasty roads, rough roads. I'm used to covering tons of ground. And a lot of people, don't understand, if they go out with me in my truck, they're like, holy crap, you took a truck into that area. I'm like, well, yeah, it's pretty standard for me. This is what I'm used to. This is what I do on my personal rig. It's what I grew up with.
Yeah.
If people are getting in there, I'm going to get in there too. But in terms of alternative patrol, I do ride a WRF 250, which is a Yamaha dirt bike. It's a trail bike. Great bike. There's days I'll cover 100 miles on that bike. So almost a whole tank of fuel, I think it carries like 2.5 gallons of gas. So I get like 50 miles a gallon, 40 miles a gallon. I guess it depends how hard I am on the throttle or where I'm going. But I use that to get into like pockets of 47 that are just way too rough for the truck. Like I can cover so much more ground on that dirt bike than I can on my pickup truck. And some of the contacts that I make, when I contact a hunter and he's way in some pocket somewhere and he's like, holy crap, I never thought I'd see a conservation officer on a bike. That is such good contact for me because they never expected me to be there. And I know they're going to go tell their family, they're going to go tell their friends, hey, I got contacted by a game warden way out here, maybe think twice before you do something you shouldn't be doing, right?
What was the worst time you ever got stuck?
Oh, geez.
He's still there.
You know, like I said, I've never actually had to get pulled out, but I've gotten really muddy. I think recently, sometimes we get this thaw cycle, this thaw and freeze cycle on some of our roads out here. And, you know, I try to stay off of them if they're really that bad. But if I have somewhere to get to, I'm going to get to it. Sometimes there's some really big, deep pools of like boggy mud, and you think it's like completely frozen over, but you sink into it and say you're not in 4-wheel drive yet. You really sink into it, and then your traction control isn't off, so you can't give the power you need to the wheels because the computer cuts the power. Now you're in big trouble. So you're like, holy crap, I'm in the middle of nowhere. Like, and like, okay, the only resource I have is my radio. And if I have to call like state dispatch or my local county dispatch and tell them the game warden got stuck, like that's super embarrassing. So I'm not gonna do that, like, unless I'm right on the fringe of like no other option.
Yeah.
So, you know, I carry a shovel and like dig that thing out, like get some big rocks and boulders underneath that. And most of the time when you're stuck, you just need a little something to get you unstuck. So if you're good at digging out, you don't mind getting dirty, and you have that rock to get underneath your tire, it's usually enough to get out. And I've been really lucky that that's worked for me, and I haven't had to make super embarrassing phone calls or radio call outs, because that's the last thing I ever want to do, because I'll never live it down for me.
Do you carry a set of those tracks with you that we see on the back of
every 4Runner in Boise?
Every 4Runner in Boise
the orange ones
has the orange tracks.
Yeah, traction tracks. I know some officers do. I don't. I probably could, and I should.
You're good with the shovel.
I feel I'm good with the shovel, and honestly, maybe I get stuck so often that I would just end up cracking them. They would be well used, you know. And I really like rocks, and those are almost readily available in my area.
Yeah. One last quick question about your truck. Do you have a name for it?
Old Blue.
Old Blue?
Old Blue, 122,000 miles. She's a champ.
Nice.
She's left me stranded, but like not in a bad area. Like a tow truck can get me there.
Making you work a little bit.
She makes me work, but she never left me stranded in a place where I felt like despair coming upon me.
Yeah. Do you and other enforcement officers do you guys talk about that, or is that kind of a closeted thing where you have a name for your truck? And
you know, I name my truck because I know I like character. I give my truck character. You know, I take care of it, get its oil changed, get a new transmission. You know, I give it a car wash here and there, you know, because my truck just gets so dirty all the time. Like if I wash it every week, what's the point? Because it's just going to get dirty again. But I do wash it. So it loves me. I love it. I'm probably the only one in the region, to be honest with you, who's named my truck. But that's just who I am. It is what it is. I'm proud of it.
Connor and I were talking about some other stuff on the drive down here, and it, like, your love language for your truck is
there's probably times where you're in a sticky situation, literally, that you're whispering sweet nothings to your truck, like, get me out of here. We've all been there.
I'm an open guy, absolutely.
Yeah.
And sometimes I give it a pat on the dash, like, good job.
The single most important relationship a man has in his life is with his truck.
That's right.
Yeah, it's true.
Then his dog.
Then his dog.
Yeah.
So one of the things we wanted to talk to you about, in particular to your region, is because it's such a big area, what are some of the tools and the strategies you use to kind of help patrol that area? Because you mentioned you're one guy patrolling such a massive swath of land. Like, how important is it working with the public? How important is it working with other enforcement officers or agencies? Biologists,
sweet
whatever.
nothings to your truck.
Exactly. Yeah. All 4 or 5 of those are huge. So obviously, number one, first and foremost, is the public, is other eyeballs out there, other hunters, other recreationalists. That's the backbone of information that comes into us, whether that's like, you know, hey, this herd isn't doing so great out there, or hey, I got, you know, this guy's causing issues out here and he's done A, B, C, and D. So the public eye is everything. That's paramount. I mean, if we lost that and people weren't willing to call things in, we'd be a fraction of what we are right now. And so second behind that is just officer coverage. You know, we try to coordinate, you know, coverage when we get those hunts and those opening hunts. We know people are going to be in a certain area. We try to get those covered with our officers, and we talk amongst ourselves all the time to try to provide that best coverage. And then third is other agencies. We do have, you know, I work in Twin Falls County. We have 2 great range deputies. I mean, their job is to basically cover all those spots where the regular deputies aren't covering. You know, they drive pickup trucks, they have quads, and they know a lot of the remote remote landmarks that I refer to as. So those guys are always keeping an eye out too for any wrongdoings out there. So all three of those are critical.
What about the equipment? Like we've talked about the truck and the motorcycle. With that area of land, like how let's say you do get stuck out in the middle of nowhere, are you prepared to stay a day or two?
Oh, absolutely. I learned a long time ago in Nevada. I mean, there's days in Nevada, I'd carry three spare tires on my work truck.
Holy moly!
Wow.
Yeah, and those guys carry transfer takes down there too. And there's days I went through 2 tires. I did two repair jobs
Sheesh.
on a dirt road, 2 exchanges. So obviously I only have 1 spare. I guess maybe they make tires better here in Idaho.
Or the rocks are
That's what
different.
we're known,
rocks are
that's what we're known
different.
for here in Idaho. Our tires.
And smooth rocks.
Yeah, smooth rocks. But I am impressed with my tires. Not beside the point. I'm a big fan of sardines and oysters. And I
we were
packed.
just talking about this last week.
I packed, my door is packed with, like, if you open my driver's door, what you're going to see is like a whole bunch of extra ammo, a couple extra magazines for my AR. And then right next to that is like 3 or 4 sardine packs. That's
Oil
like,
or water?
Yeah, that was our debate the other day. Was oil or water for your sardines? Do you like them packed in?
I'm an oil guy. Yeah. I mean, like, I don't, you know what I mean? Like, I eat a Fat Boy for dessert every night. Like, I'll do it just fine right now.
Well, you might get stranded out there for 3 days.
Exactly.
Well, the omega-3s, his brain is firing.
yeah.
And let's be honest, like, if you spend a lot of time out there, your lips get really, dry.
Yeah.
So that oil is almost like
Nature's chapstick.
It's
Yeah.
nature's chapstick.
Yeah.
But yeah, I carry a lot of jugs of water. Like, I have, at least a couple gallons of water at all times, and then sardines, which a man can just live off of that.
Yeah.
So.
More men should.
Proof.
Yeah.
Yeah, and be prepared. You got to be prepared to walk 30, 40 miles. Like,
Yeah.
you might be dead at the end, but you got to be willing to do that.
I guess that's a question I never thought of. But do they?
He made it 39 of the 40.
Yeah. Do enforcement officers have some sort of regime to stay in shape, or some sort of program to like keep cardio up?
That's all up to the officer. I mean, they
Okay.
do incentivize us. So 2 of our hours, and this is kind of like, so Idaho State Police does something similar. They get X amount of hours out of their work week to clock in and go to the gym. So,
okay.
I mean, and we have the same program. We get 2 hours every week that we can claim for gym. But that's critical because we're law enforcement like everything else. So, the agency wants you to be in shape, but you as an individual should, take care of yourself as well, right? If you need to be in shape, whether that's to, go find somebody or just to do your job effectively, or if you get in a fight or a scuffle with somebody, you need to, at least be like, oh, wow, I wasn't out of shape and that's why I lost that fight. So keeping in shape and keeping strong is super important. And you also want that physical appearance too. You don't want to, look too sloppy,
Yeah.
right?
Walk
Like,
into a hunting camp and
Right.
be like out of breath.
I mean, criminals do size you up and like,
Found you guys.
Oh, there you are.
There, finally.
exactly. And
Reeking of sardines.
that's when they know they shouldn't mess with you because you mean business.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but
cool. I didn't know that.
absolutely. I mean, honestly, like, a large percentage of our guys are not, hard criminals, but you come across a few who are criminals and they are going to test you.
Yeah.
And you got to put your boot down on the ground and you want to stay firm, but you want to stay in shape. It's all part of the appearance in your job that you have to do.
That's one thing that absolutely just amazes me about you guys. What you do every day is you're going into potentially an active crime scene, or you're potentially walking into a situation that can be
Somebody else's worst day.
Yeah. And like, so as an enforcement officer, what is going through your mind? How do you prepare yourself mentally? I guess also physically too, but how do you prepare yourself mentally, specifically when you're walking into a hunting camp or going down to a fishing dock or something like that, where you know that the person could potentially be dangerous?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to our training. When we first get hired, and you go to that police academy, they train you to always be diligent, always be on the watch, and always be prepared for the worst. And, at the end of the day, we're human, right? And we're not always perfect. We're not always as diligent or always on our top A game as that we should be. But that's something that you need to be thinking of nonetheless, and you need to be prepared for. And something we talk about in law enforcement and being a conservation officer in Idaho is going through certain scenarios in your head. Okay, I walk up to this dock. I walk up to this camp. What if he pulls a gun on me? What if he pulls a knife on me? What if he's not following my commands and he's starting to get sketchy and he's got his hands in his pockets and I've asked him multiple times to get his hands out of his pockets? I mean, these are big red flags. So just like any high stress training, whether law enforcement or any other high stress job, what they preach in training and what you have to run through in your mind is, if somebody does this, how am I going to react? Because if you've thought about it, you're probably going to do it. If you haven't thought about it, there's going to be a pretty good delay, and delays can cause issues. Yeah. So you know, a lot for myself, I thought about those instances. I'm like, this is how I'm going to react. And it's not black and white. Like, everything's dynamic, but you need to think about it. If you thought about it, you're probably going to react on it within time.
Yeah.
Did you, speaking of that, did you have to learn another language as well? Like, there's a large Hispanic population down here. Have you learned Spanish?
No, I wish I was fluent in Spanish. In fact, I enjoy the language
down here too. So
yeah, no, we do have a lot of our constituents, you know, come from that area and do speak solely Spanish, or maybe they speak poor English. So it's very beneficial. I speak very little, and I understand even less. So I can usually get, you know, hey, I need a driver's license. I need a fishing license. I use a lot of Google Translate on my phone, and that's not perfect, but it's good enough. It's something, you know, like, hey, you got a ticket. This is your court date. You need to show up for this, stuff like that. But they could also, you know, I'll hand them my phone if I trust them and be like, well, what do you need to tell me? And they'll, you know, they'll ask their questions and stuff like that. So that's super beneficial. But I did take 2 years of Spanish in high school. I had a great Spanish teacher, and I have like just small remnants. But like I said, they, you know, I'll say a few things and then they think I'm kind of fluent, and that,
or you say the wrong word.
Oh, they laugh all the time. I know I'm like really bad at Spanish, and they laugh, but they know what I'm saying.
So Google Translate, we did a podcast with a conservation officer in Salmon, and he has been there with the agency for 20 years.
Yeah, at least.
So his experience is much different than yours for a myriad of reasons. But when you say Google Translate, it makes me think of like, what other modern technologies do you have at in your toolkit that you're not relying on solely? Like, when I think of Justin, like he's just been doing this for so long that there's things that are ingrained in every relationship. Is, you know, he's probably been to their kids' sports games or whatever. Whereas you are on the front end of your career. But how is technology helping you? Maybe obviously not catch up to where he's at in his career, but how is it helping you in your current job?
Yeah, I mean, technology is huge. It's evolving. There's lots of dynamics with that. I mean, technology in law enforcement has you know, leaps and bounds, whether it's plate readers or seeing who's coming and going at just on the interstate like that, right? I mean, you can put in information and figure out, you know, somebody coming into my state and stuff like that. So that's really helpful. We've actually used drones. I mean, I had a case recently that's not closed up yet, but we had a case that we used a drone and we found a deer that we needed to find as evidence. And we used a drone for that. And like, I full-heartedly believed that like that drone was the reason that we found it. And we found it so quickly. So that aerial coverage with drones has been super helpful for recovering things. And then of course, you know, we use Onyx and stuff like that. Those mapping systems are huge. You know, searchable PDFs and documents. I mean, I can pull up a whole code book on my phone and search a couple keywords and boom, I have the laws that might be applicable to what I'm looking at. I mean, that's a huge help right there. Yeah. And then, of course, I mean, Idaho seems really good at maintaining their own databases. Idaho Fish and Game, I should say, you know, whether it's a hunt planner or a fishing planner. I mean, those are available to the public, but those are things that I use all the time to figure out what's open in my area or what's open to an area that I'm going to. So
that's a good point.
Very helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, because, well, kind of what Bieri was saying too, what's interesting hearing your perspective and being a little bit newer at it compared to Justin Williams, who he brought up several points of,
I think he still rides a horse to work.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
The salmon region's built different. From
yeah,
it is. Yes.
He mentioned several examples of kind of like the old school methods of finding things, and here, you know, you are with some kind of newer modern things, and I think that's interesting to kind of Do you find yourself embracing other kind of old school skills that a conservation officer would use prior to all the technology that we have now?
Yeah. Do you have a mentor that you're able to roll your eyes at and just say like, oh, you guys are so old?
Oh, absolutely. We have a couple senior officers in our area, and I won't list them by name.
Yeah, please don't.
And they're excellent. They're excellent officers. I look up to them. I mean, they trained me. Field training gives you your foundation, and then your fellow officers and those senior officers really build you as a new officer. And you look up to them, look up to their cases, their methods, some of their viewpoints, and how they handle those situations. So the old school way is super prevalent, and it's incredibly important, and we can't forget it. And I think one of the biggest things of that is just field presence, but talking to people. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you can talk to people, if you can sit down with somebody who's made, I call it made a violation or committed a violation, just communication is key. I mean, a lot of times you're like, oh, we need warrants, we need this, and we need all of this technology, when in fact, if we can just sit down with somebody and they're willing to talk to us and we ask the right questions, and we can get super far with that right there. And that's just old school right there. Mm-hmm. Just be good at talking to people. Mm-hmm. You can talk your way into stuff. You can talk your way out of stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been, out with county deputies, and, we're trying to get somebody out of a vehicle, and, a county guy's like, hey, you got to get out of the vehicle, but the guy just won't for whatever reason, and if you talk to them, and I'll go up and just talk to them, explain things, then all of a sudden, boom, they pop out of the vehicle. Well, it's no different with fish and game law enforcement. You can really talk people out of stuff and help them explain, or at least, they'll respect you a little bit for that.
That was one thing that Justin Williams up in the Salmon region talked about a lot, and said that he emphasized how important it was to have those communication skills. And I can't remember if he started with a biology background. I think he did, or if he had some sort of communications background, but he was talking about it, and I want to hear about, your experience with the community here is, little as it's been within a couple of years, but like the communication aspect of not only being out in the field talking to anglers and hunters and trappers, but also the community here locally. What kind of role do you serve talking to the local people, local community?
Yeah, the constant outreach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you said, besides all the field contacts we make, we do a lot of, I know just as myself as a conservation officer, I've done a lot of outreach with school programs. Mm-hmm. Well, last year we had Kimberly Middle School came down to Salmon Falls for a fishing event. They had a couple enthusiastic people who worked at that school who wanted to take kids fishing. We'll meet up with them, do a presentation, help the kids fish, stuff like that. Recently I went out to made some contacts with the folks out there in Three Creek, which is way out there on the border of 46 and 47. They have this little school, and I think there was, 4 or 5 kids, if that. Like, there's just nothing, just some ranch kids out there, and it's one of the most remote schools, I swear, in the lower 48. I don't know if that's a real number or not, but that's something I think I've heard. And going out there and explaining what we do as fishing game, what I do as a conservation officer, why conservation law enforcement is important, and its purpose. So that outreach there is huge, and making those connections with those folks out there is super, super valuable.
Yeah. Pretty high percentage of anglers or hunters if you've got 4 kids in a town.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So tell us about like an ideal day, and then also also if you have any stories about like the most random day that you've ever had, where something just, you woke up one morning and it's not at all how you thought it was going to go today.
Kind of maybe like today.
Yeah, today's probably,
Yeah, Terry Thompson just threw me into the pot here.
Yeah, I know.
You can blame Terry.
We're gonna settle our hash with him later.
We'll get to Terry later.
Yeah, stay tuned.
Yeah, in episode 2 be determined.
Let's see, ideal day, 65 degrees, sunny, maybe a high of 70, 5-mile-an-hour wind. I'm just get the weather out of the way. That's my favorite. Fall.
Ooh, okay.
Fall. I mean, if you work for fishing game and fall isn't your favorite time of year, then I don't, or if you live in Idaho and you're a hunter and angler, I mean, if fall isn't your favorite, then I don't know what to say. There's some benefits to spring. I love turkey hunting, but beside the fact,
ticks ain't fun though.
No, they're not. They're not.
Do you guys even get ticks down here? Is there enough
foliage?
Okay.
Oh yeah. Stuff lives in the desert. Okay.
Ticks live everywhere, man.
Yeah, they do. I mean, and the amount of times that I pulled ticks off me, like I'm out working and I'm driving back from work, and I could just feel the tick climbing up my back and my hair. but you're like on the interstate, so you have to compose yourself so you don't crash. Yeah.
It's one of Connor's enemies.
Oh, I hate them.
It is a
hate
tick. Yeah.
Let's see. Ideal day. I love patrolling on a dirt bike. I think it's the coolest thing that we get to do that here in Idaho, and that they still allow that. And I don't take that for granted for one moment.
Would you ever trade a dirt bike for a horse if you could?
No.
Okay.
I think horses are more, they're just needy. They're needy. I mean, the steel horse doesn't buck you. And I'm not a horse guy. I know nothing about horses. All I know is that a dirt bike is far more reliable.
Yeah.
And they don't need food.
Did you name your dirt bike too?
I haven't. It doesn't have much of a personality, to be honest with you.
So anyways, your ideal day is you're cruising along on your dirt bike. It's 65 degrees.
Yeah, and I'm going through an aspen patch. The leaves are changing. And then, I come across...
What song's on?
I don't even listen to music. I'm listening to the rustling of the leaves. And
nature's music.
you come across, say a junior hunter. Like, I love junior hunters because I look back, I'm like, holy crap, that was me a while ago. And this is what caused me to be where I'm at this very second. Mm-hmm. And, you come across a junior hunter and he just shot his first buck or his first doe or something like that. And, and he got everything right. He's got his tag punched correctly. He's got evidence of sex done correctly, which is like amazing.
Yeah.
And you're like, holy crap.
I have buddies that can't even do that.
Yeah.
Right.
And their dad's not a game warden. You know what I mean? Like, they don't know, all the laws, but yet here they are, and they've just checked all their boxes. They've done it perfectly. Mm-hmm. And it's just the greatest moment, give them a fist bump, give them a high five. Like, it's a great feeling for me because it's, that's the next generation. That's what I grew up doing and loving, and coming across that out in the field, and they didn't even expect to see you there because, they didn't expect you to be on a dirt bike or way up there that day. That's the best feeling. A quality contact, a junior hunter who just found some of his or her first success is awesome.
Do they seem like the junior hunters, do they seem like genuinely like, oh, wow, that was a game warden? Or do they like seem like relieved once you leave?
I think it depends. It depends. Most of them are super ecstatic, because they don't know what might happen if they haven't gotten the rules correct.
Yeah.
Most of them are pretty excited. And of course, it depends on the kids. Some kids are way more outgoing and some are a lot more shy. So some of the shy kids definitely hunker down. They're like, oh, cop, game warden, whatever, like that. But some were just happy to see you.
Did you ever have any experiences with game wardens down in Nevada when you were a kid?
Oh, I did.
You did?
Which is surprisingly, they never contacted me when I was in the middle of nowhere. But when I hit those hot spots that I talk about where I work a lot more, I did. Yeah, I remember when I was super, super young. And maybe it's TMI, but it's not. It's all relative. So I've been on the flip side of the coin, right, with the game and the game laws. Nothing crazy, don't worry.
Yeah.
But when I was super little, my grandpa would take me rabbit hunting. I love rabbit hunting. And I remember like he was getting checked by the game warden and I was walking back to the truck. The game warden had no idea I was there. I was probably like, I don't even know, 13, 14 years old, super young. And he was, talking to my grandpa, and I hid in a bush. Like I didn't want to go out and say hi to the game warden. He didn't know I was there.
He didn't know you were
there. I didn't know. And
or...
I had, I wasn't over limit or doing nothing crazy, but I was scared. I'm like, I don't want to go talk to him. Like I'm nervous. He's running my grandpa down, and he wasn't. But I was like, oh crap. And then I remember when I was, 16 or 17, I was duck hunting on this federal refuge, and I think my mom took me that day. She's like, let's go out. I'll, pay for your tank of gas and buy you a Subway sandwich, and we'll go out and do some duck hunting and stuff.
Yeah. Buy some sardines.
Exactly.
Stocked up.
Perfect. And I was out there, and it was an evening hunt. I was duck hunting in the evening. And to me, when I read the regulations, or how I thought I had anyway at that age, I could shoot 30 minutes after the sun went down. Just like I could shoot 30 minutes before sunrise, I could shoot 30 minutes after sunrise. Well, we all know that's not correct. Duck hunting ends and waterfowl hunting ends at sunrise. So there I was blasting away 15, 20 minutes after shooting light. Game warden rolls up.
Uh-oh.
I'm like, I didn't know I had done anything wrong. He's like, yeah, you can't do that. You interpreted, you read it wrong. I'm like, well, I'm so sorry. I don't even have any ducks to show for this, boo-hoo on me. And he was a super, super nice guy. He was an old warden, and he's like, you know what, this is a super genuine mistake. Like, no harm, no foul really here. I'm going to educate you. He gave me a verbal warning that day, and that went super, super far. And I took that from there and then started to like dive into the regulation book. And, every time I did something that I thought was wrong or anything like that, I'd go into the regulation book and inform myself better. So I learned the game laws better and better from then on.
That's neat.
Yeah.
Because it could, yeah. There's stories out there too where it could go, not within our circle, but I mean, where it could go the opposite way and kind of scare you for life or whatever.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
yeah.
What do you think has been the longest day that you've had so far?
Today.
No,
Also
no,
today,
I've had way
thanks,
longer.
Terry.
I've had longer days in other places. Besides like doing a long day of driving, which just doesn't count for me. We've had some big cases come through Region 4 here that were like a full day of like legitimate involvement. And I think 17, 18 hours of just nonstop, like monitoring, involvement, traffic stops, evidence. So just like a day that was continuously, you had to be on your A game.
Do you have to jump from, I don't know if case is the right word, but incident? Do you have to like jump from incident to incident in these kinds of days? Or is it like, boom, you've already talked, you're currently investigating something, but then all of a sudden another call comes in. Do you have to jump to that one? Or is it, you get to it when you can, when you're finished with it?
It's all priority.
Okay.
You know, a lot of times if I have information that a violation was already broken and I know the who, what, when, and where, I can get back to it. And there's some calls are just more important than others. Some are, you know, a higher level of violation. So I might actually clear from one call to go take care of something that's much more serious, even if I haven't completed that first call yet, because something's more serious. And then anything that's public safety or, you know, imminent danger, immediate danger for public or something like that's going to take 100% precedent. I'm going to clear from any call I have to get to that call. So there is times when I get call after call. It just comes out of the blue some days that I'm just getting hit up, you know, the end of duck season or something like that. I got multiple trespass complaints. I got this, I got that. I got somebody hunting from a motorized vehicle, and I prioritize what's the biggest violation and go from there and pursue that. So yeah, we do jump around quite a bit on busy days.
Okay. Question I had was, in your experience and from what you know with other conservation officers, do poaching incidents seem to be one-offs, or do they seem to be serial cases?
It depends on the group or the individual.
Okay, so there's no generalization of
There's
it.
no generalization, but there is a distinction of those two. We do have serial poachers and serial poaching groups, 100%. They go out and they do it, they premeditate it, and they get out there and they get it done. And then we have the one-offs who either one just made a genuine mistake, or two got tempted real quick. You know, they knew the law and they knew they shouldn't do it, but they just, now it's right in front of them and they just did it. But they didn't go out there with the intent to do that day. So there's a bit of both.
Okay. I guess kind of along those lines, what do you think deep down inside of ourselves is the driver for most wildlife crimes? Do you think it's, you kind of mentioned like I shouldn't say ourselves, I don't want to.
Human nature.
Yeah,
I see
human
what you're getting
nature.
at.
Do you feel like it's again, kind of maybe purely accidental? Is it ignorance? Or is it kind of taking an opportunity when folks aren't looking?
I think on a majority of more of the significant violations, when I say significant, I mean most people know that that's clearly a violation or clearly against the law. Most of those folks are opportunistic. So what you were kind of alluding to, human nature, you know, would I lie if I saw a big buck out of season and I, you know, drove by that on some rural road where I thought nobody was watching and said, wow, wouldn't I love to have that on my wall?
Sure.
Most people are going to admit that. I'm willing to admit that. You know, I'm not obviously going to poach it because I'm a man of ethics.
Yeah.
And I'm a man who, you know, follows the law to the best extent I possibly can. But it is human nature to, you know, possibly want to push the boundaries or get away with things if somebody thinks they can get away with it. And they're tempted by it, you know, it's a vice. People get caught up in vices all the time, and they follow those, and they might see that, and, you know, it's probably a stretch to call that a vice, but for some people it is, and they can't resist that.
Yep.
And they're going to go take that. Yeah. So it is human nature for that sometimes for folks.
That's a really good way to look at it. I never thought of it like that, with it being a vice, but yeah, it happens, you know?
It does. Some of it intentional, some not.
Yeah. We're down here in the driest of dry climates, the desert. Is it harder to track a poaching case in drier, more remote places like down here, or harder than it would be in like more wooded area? Or is it not? Or is the terrain not that much of a hindrance?
I think it goes both ways. I think that the massive openness, you know, if I'm looking for a certain side-by-side or a certain truck who I think's up to no good, I have a lot of open area to glass them and try to find them. So the openness can really benefit in trying to find people because you can see things from really far away. Say you have a wounded deer that you're trying to find that somebody didn't try to look for or something like that, that sagebrush or the poofy dust absorbs blood. And I speak from personal experience trying to find deer that I've shot, archery hunting and stuff like that. Like that poof dust absorbs blood. It can be really hard to find a blood trail sometimes out here and follow wounded animals because of the terrain. So it can go both ways.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. What are some of the, you alluded to this when we first started, northern Idaho is so wooded, and it's just down here. What's something that people may not know, like a main difference down here? Is it the desert? Is it the canyons? Like if you were describing the territory to somebody that maybe from back east that had no understanding of what this part of Idaho was about, how would you explain that to a person?
Yeah, if somebody picked up a elk tag way out in the boonies of 46 or something like that, and I get this call like, what do I need out there? I tell them it's rough, it's remote. You better bring extra fuel. You better bring an extra spare or two for tires, chains if you have them. Come along to pull yourself out and know how to do a ground anchor and stuff like that. It's brutal country. You're a long ways from help. It's this rough terrain. It's a different beast, and we do have a lot of little small towns here in Idaho, but compared to northern Idaho, your spots out here, you're a lot longer away from any help or any services.
Does 46, you said you're 46 and part of 47, or do I have that backwards?
I'm actually almost all of 46 and I do have all of 47.
Okay. Does your western boundary of 46 touch the Owyhees then, or is it all pretty much you just got rolling sagebrush hills?
It doesn't get up to the Owyhees.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty dang close though, but it does get up to them.
Do you have any funny anecdotes from your time patrolling? And you said 2 years, right?
Yeah, about 2 years.
Okay. Any funny stories patrolling?
Jeez, I gotta think off the top of my head, but maybe if I think of something, I'll swing back around to that.
Okay. Terry, you're awful quiet over there. Do you have anything that we should ask? Maybe from a comms bureau perspective or a communications perspective, or anything that you're dying to know about Sam?
No, this has been really interesting. It's kind of eye-opening. Not eye-opening in a bad way, but...
yeah, he's on to you now, Sam.
Yeah. But I think our new conservation officers are much more keyed into the communication side. He brought it up about being able to talk to people, because so many of those contacts, it's how that initial approach, you don't want to come across as that hard guy.
Yeah.
Sam, I'm sure, could be, if need be. But, the one thing that they always talk about, that a conservation officer goes into every situation knowing that the person they're going to encounter is armed. Firearm, knife. So, you talked about that earlier, which is if you're a traditional officer, you always approach it as if they are, but with ours, they've got something on them.
Yeah.
Or both.
Yeah, they all go through posts and all that. Do you have any EMT training? Is that part of training too? Particularly with the amount of land you have to. Like if something happens out in the boonies, you've got to be prepared more than just like staying warm and fed. Like if you break an ankle or whatever, or come upon some people that are struggling.
Yeah, so I'll start with the first part of that. The training that the regular police officer and conservation officer receives here in Idaho is minimal. It's basically like we do what they call TAC med, tactical medicine, which is another name for it is just stop the bleed. So in law enforcement, a lot of the wounds that a law enforcement officer might receive from interactions with the public, possibly themselves, is they get shot, so a bullet gets put through a person, or they get stabbed. So these are serious trauma wounds, and that typically involve blood. So what they do train us is how to stop the bleed. So tourniquets, gauze, stuffing wounds, stuff like that. Can I get a tourniquet on my leg or my arm? You can tourniquet, those extremities, but what if I get hit in the neck or my stomach? What am I going to do? That's something that's going to have to be, treated or, from the outside, or maybe you can pack certain spots. You can't pack stuff in the chest area or stomach area. So you do receive some training on how to handle like an emergency bleed out type of situation. Personally for me, I did receive a basic EMT training, regular EMT basic, got my national registry well before I had started this job. I was licensed for a few years. I never used that license. It's since expired. So I do have a little bit more understanding of like, wow, that's a bad injury. That's a really bad injury. We need a helicopter to get you out of here if we can. Or, I think diesel fuel is just fine for you. We don't need a helicopter. Like, we need to get you out quicker. You might have time. So those are what you're going to make decisions in the field. If I come across somebody who's wounded in the field, at the end of the day, I have very limited resources to help them. I'm not a paramedic, and I'm not even equipped with basic EMT stuff. I don't have suction. I don't have oxygen. I don't have basic medications, besides Advil and stuff like that. So we carry a basic first aid kit, but we can, I can stabilize if you got a broken leg or a broken arm and the fracture is not too bad. We can get a SAM splint on it. We can stabilize it. We can hobble you out and try to get you to hospital or rendezvous with an ambulance or something like that. Or if it's really bad and you can't get moved and you're really busted up in the backcountry, I'll do my best to comfort you as a person. I don't have a lot of resources to take your pain away. I can't give you no morphine or nothing like that, or any strong narcotics to take away your pain, but I'll be there with you if I can get to you, and we're going to try to get a helicopter to come pull you out of there.
Yeah, you have your radio as well.
We do.
Yeah,
that works sometimes, and sometimes we're not in radio service.
Yeah,
we do carry what they call in-reaches.
Okay. Yeah.
And we have unlimited subscriptions for that. So at the end of the day, we always have a way to contact somebody.
Yeah,
radio is preferable because it goes straight to dispatch. It's immediate. Your immediate contact, and the in-reach is just a few extra contacts to get to your
Boy, would that suck if you're out there and you get stranded and find out Fishing Game is only paying 15 credits for your in-reach. You used them all up last week.
Sorry, man. I'm maxed out, brother.
Terry.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So I think I have just one more question, and then we can go around the room, too, to figure out what else we want to know about you, Sam. But you mentioned you're big into hunting, big into fishing as well. But with the hunting background, this is a question we asked Justin too. Do you feel like as a hunter you can kind of tap into the brain of a hunter as well to kind of understand, or even a trapper too? I don't know if you do any trapping, but can you tap into those pursuits if being involved in those to help with solving cases, doing investigations, things like that?
Yo, it's paramount. I mean, if you're a conservation officer having experience with all those things above, obviously the one thing I don't have a ton of experience is with trapping. I've done extremely limited trapping. I think I've trapped one beaver, a problem beaver, once in my life. That's it. The other things I have pretty dang good experience with. I do a ton of fly fishing and stuff like that. And I've done almost all disciplines of hunting, archery, muzzleloader, all of that, with almost all of the different critters out there. Yeah, so tapping into the mind of the hunter is huge. So understanding what is normal and what is not normal as an officer is huge. So in other words, do I believe this was a genuine mistake, or you should have known better? Almost everybody knows this. Is this intentional? Was this an oopsies? Is this something I've done multiple times? It's huge. And then obviously just your skill to navigate or to track animals is huge in solving cases. But and just talking to the general public, like if you're knowledgeable about hunting, you're going to go a lot further with getting information from people and talking to, possible violators out there. They are also going to understand that what you're talking about. So they're going to, not feed you as much lies. Because at the end of the day, people lie to me all the time. And that's something I've realized in 2 years is how much I get lied to is insane. And that's true for all law enforcement. We almost go back to human nature. It's almost human nature to lie to people, especially when they get caught with some of these things, and trying to decipher that when I do get the truth versus when I do get the lie, having that background in it is huge.
What are some of the most elaborate lies that you've heard or been told?
just everything. I mean, from the top of like, I wasn't even hunting, but yet I know he, shot a deer, or I don't, I have a tag, but yet they don't have a tag. I mean, just lies. I mean, just flat out,
Things
like,
that are easy
I
to
wasn't
trace.
even there. I don't know what you're talking about. Like, people just lie right off the top. Some people, give you some truth and some lie, and then some people just flat out
They
lie
just
to you.
double down.
Yeah. I mean, there's massive cases that you started off with nothing but complete dishonesty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I have one more question. You have anything, Bieri?
No, we're gonna go through cap.
Okay. Really quick on let's do cat first because I have a question that's more wildlife related.
So we've talked about outreach and just getting the public not necessarily on your side, but engaging the public to understand how they can help. Let's talk about the CAP program just a little bit and be a good witness. There's a phone number for that. What is that phone number?
Let's see, 1-800-632-5999. That is the CAP, or the Citizens Against Poaching number.
Yes.
And he did that off the top of his head. It was
I know.
amazing.
Just you remembered it. I'm actually looking at a sign. I don't know how old that banner is. We're sitting in an office here in the region that has some relics.
That the paper's yellow, so
yeah,
I'm gonna say it's
the
pretty
paper's
old.
yellow, and that looks like it's easily from the
Is that Terry?
80s or 90s.
1800s possible.
But this phone number has not changed in a long time. Citizens Against Poaching. How else could our citizens help you within our Be a Good Witness program? How can they help you?
Well, it all starts with the CAP, and it all starts with the willingness to provide that information. I get so many reports of, I might contact a hunter per se, and he's like, hey, a couple weeks ago, this happened. And I'm like, holy crap, I wish you would have called me on my landline, my work phone.
My rotary phone.
I wish you would have sent by a Pony Express. But no, it's, I hear that. I'm like, I really wish you would have reported that. So it all starts with the willingness to report violations, and especially significant violations are really important to get our hands on and get those big cases where people need to be held accountable, get that ball rolling. So initiating that call to CAP. So that's number one, is being willing to go forward with your information and everything that you've seen. But we talk about Be a Good Witness, and it's got these, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. We got 5 pillars here: vehicle, location, wildlife, photo, suspect description. These are all super important for us as law enforcement, because we have some tools to follow up with people, or to stop and interrogate people or talk to them that the general public doesn't have. So you get a violation. Vehicles are huge. People are always out hunting, whether it's and they're hunting in their side by side or their truck. Well, everything has a description. Is it a 2-door black Ford? All of this information is super important. So say where the vehicle comes into a really important play for us is I need to know what I'm looking for in the field. So you call me, I might be a long ways away, but I'm going to say, hey, that's a big violation that's in progress. I'm going to be en route, and you give me a vehicle description of, I got a black F-150 slightly lifted, and it's got 2T plates or Twin Falls County plates or something like that. That person's probably not going to be in the same place that you witnessed the violation, but he's probably going to be coming out the same 1-lane highway or 2-lane highway that I'm coming in on to try to intercept him.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know for sure that that's the person who committed a crime, or what you told me is, probably, I wouldn't be there if it wasn't criminal in nature, or, naturally a violation of the law. I can, stop that vehicle, make a reasonable, articulable, suspicion stop on that vehicle and talk to the guy. So I can pull him over, turn around and pull him over and say, hey man, like this vehicle that matched your description that's coming out of the middle of nowhere match this of possible violation in progress. So then boom, we get that started, that contact started. I get his information. I get to talk to the possible suspect who committed a possible violation. And we get to hold them accountable right then and there. So that's where like vehicle becomes really important. Location, like we all have jurisdictions and stuff like that. Like I need to know, did this happen in Nevada? Well, this needs to get passed on to them. Did it happen in Idaho? It's mine. Like, is this in 54? Does a different officer need to handle this who might be closer? So location's important, as well as, okay, like what county do I need to issue a citation to and stuff like that. And it's just going to give me a general idea where I need to go to possibly intercept this violator. Wildlife, that's important. You know, is it a moose? Is it a deer? Is it an elk? Is it like, did you shoot a chucker from a roadway? Like, you know, how important is this? How much do we need to get resources out there? So that's really important. You know, is it a big bull moose? Like, holy crap, we're going to, you know, give it everything we got. You know, is it something a little less? Then we're going to adjust accordingly for resources. Photos are huge. So like photos of an incident are technically direct evidence. Sometimes if you go to court and we have these photos, like one, it gives me photos to say 1,000 words. If I have a photo of the vehicle, I could be like, oh, that's the truck. Boom. That's the plate. That's the truck. Or a photo of a violation in progress. It's right there. It's all right there in a photo. You know, there's no recollection or somebody speaking to anything. The photo speaks for itself if it's showing a violation or evidence or criminal activity or something like that. I mean, that's like direct evidence that we can use to hold somebody accountable in court.
Are you talking about like photos that you and staff take, or photos that maybe like turn up on social media or something?
Yeah, that they might turn up on social media, or that if you're a witness and you provide us with something that you got off of social media, or you're in the field and you have photos of like some illegal stuff and this illegal deer and stuff like that they stuffed in the back of their truck, like that's really important for us. So those photos come into play quite a bit. Suspect description. So like obviously we have the vehicle description, but who is the suspect? You know, is it a male? Is it a female? You know, what's the skin tone? Like all that stuff matters for me. So when I go out looking for this person, or I try to follow up a few days later, I can match up those descriptions and say, hey, you know what? I have good cause to believe that you are the individual. I mean, even if they completely deny every single allegation, it's like, you know what? This witness gave me such good information, I can still charge this case because I have good reason to believe that you are that person, regardless of whether you admit to it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. It's super important to have that information for us.
Yeah. That's, and you know, we've talked about the tools that you use, all the things modern, old school and whatever, but this is one of those things that remains the same. And it's just the current through line is the CAP program. And calling that phone number and just continuing to let people know that is a resource for not only for you but for them as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's as far as we know always going to be there.
Yeah, and that's one of the neat things about the hunting community too is we all kind of enforce each other, enforce ourselves. If we see something that looks negatively on hunters, or we see something that potentially is illegal or suspicious, you know, wanting to make sure that person is held responsible, and we don't face the same repercussions, I guess.
Yeah, we have a super special thing here in North American conservation of, you know, wildlife conservation. That's a beautiful thing that we have, and how we protect our wildlife for everyone in the state to use, regardless of their financial status. You know, that's special here in America. The opportunity we offer in America and then the opportunity we offer here in Idaho is incredibly special. So who we are as Americans and who we are as Idahoans is directly related and reflected to our wildlife, and us taking good care of our wildlife and being good stewards of it.
Yeah. One good way for hunters to continue like upholding those ethics and whatnot with modern technology is just to put that number in their phone as well, so that it's at the ready to put in as the contact is just CAP and then 1-800-632-5999 as that, so it's ready to go.
Yeah, and it's also on the back of every hunting license and tag that we sell. It's all right there. So if you're in the field, flip your tag across, you're going to have that number. Give that number a call. It gets us started. It gets things rolling in the right direction. And we can't forget there's some decent money behind, you know, if we apprehend somebody and get you know, charges on somebody, you could be in for a pretty decent reward too. So
good incentive.
Yeah, it is a good incentive.
One last question that I have, you mentioned wildlife, and that's a good segue. Aside from enforcing laws and aside from going and catching bad guys, what are some ways that you all, like some other hats that you wear here in the region, that in ways that you help with wildlife and fisheries? Are there field days that you go out? You mentioned earlier, I think, count and elect surveys, roaming around in your truck. but things like that too, that folks, hunters, members of the public might not realize that you guys aren't just going out and shining lights on bad guys, but you guys are also out here helping our wildlife staff and our fisheries staff with different things that they do, because, you know, the regions there's only so many people that can go out and do these surveys. What are some ways that you help out and kind of lend a hand when things are tight?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right from the start, there's two different things, two different definitions. One's a conservation officer, one's a game warden, and I use them very interchangeably. And yes, they are very interchangeable by nature. A conservation officer, kind of by definition, is actually they are a police officer who represents the Fish and Game Agency, but a conservation officer partakes in a lot more like biological aspect. So just what you were referring to, we do those lek surveys, we do those fawn surveys, those antelope surveys, you know, we do riparian work or fence installation or rangeland work and sagebrush seedings and bitterbrush seedings. So conservation officers, they use that term here in Idaho because Idaho allows their conservation officers to partake in all of these other activities and a lot more of the, you know, wildlife environmental side of the agency. And that's the best part about it, because it gives them it gives me a lot more well-rounded outlook, and it also allows the officer to connect with all the other biologists and field staff and personnel who are working at that office. So we get a great opportunity to go out and do, I've gotten to go out and do pit tag sturgeon from the hatcheries and do scut marks and stuff like that.
Cool.
Pronghorn fawn surveys, riparian work, sagebrush seedings. So we can spend a chunk of our time going out there and just kind of doing what a regular biologist or, regular habitat guy would do.
Yeah. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I guess by game warden, the other flip side of game warden is one who really concentrates almost solely on the enforcement of the laws.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the difference there.
Bieri, you got any other burning desire questions that you want to ask Sam?
I have checked everything on the sheet
Love it.
at this point.
Sweet, man. Sam, you got anything for us or anything you want the listeners or public to know, or any last minute things you want to throw out there?
No, I just generally enjoy the state. I'm new to Idaho and I absolutely love it. The people here in Idaho are just absolutely amazing. So for everyone listening, thank you for being an amazing state and amazing public. I truly mean that. People really care here in this state, and they're just really, really friendly, and they're great to work with. So on that note, thank you very much for that.
Do you want to give a shout out to your truck?
Thank you, Old Blue.
Old Blue.
I have to say she's taken a few more cranks to start, so I think my fuel pump's on the way out. So I don't want to talk her up too much, because you guys might hear about me eating little sardines for 5 days. So.
Just at this point, when you're listening back to this podcast in Old Blue, maybe just turn this part down.
And if you're listening to this in your truck right now, give your truck a little pat on the dash, give it a name if it doesn't have one already, and tell it thank you.
Yeah, and if it's really done you good, give it a little 91 gas, give it some high octane.
You're right. Birthday's coming up.
Birthday. We're not too far removed from Valentine's Day.
That's right. Well, Sam, thanks so much, man, for sitting down and letting us come over to your region and ask you way more questions than you probably ever wanted to answer. But this has been really fun, man. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.